What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I am Rad, back with another video. And today I want to go into this interesting article that says those born between 1970 and 1985 are ditching Gen X and millennial titles for Gen Goonie. Stick around. Let's talk about it.
All I need are some tasty waves, cool buzz, and I'm fine.
Today, I want to get into this article that actually my youngest son, Roth, sent me. I'm not quite sure how it popped up on his feed, but it's definitely an interesting one. And we were driving up to Nebraska, got to represent my Cornhuskers, right? And then he was telling me about it when he was in the back seat, kind of telling me about, you know, Jen Goonie. I was kind of like, what the, like, whatever. And I said, send me the article and I'm going to read it. And then after I got into it, it kind of made a lot of sense. So I'll put a link to the article in the description box below. But let's go ahead and get in it. We're just going to read through this, kind of chat about it a little bit. And for give me your thoughts, drop comments below. Let me know your thoughts. Go back and read the article yourself, then think about it maybe, and then let me know. So this is an article from Upworthy.com. Not really familiar with the website. Don't know normally what they produce or do. But for the sake of this video, I'm just reading this article. So again, the title, those born between 1970 and 1985 are ditching Gen X and millennial titles for Gen Goonie. These kids grew up in a very specific and free way. Of course, we know that. So just to clarify, Gen X is 1965 to 1980, and you'd be surprised how many times I'll get people in the comments that try to say Gen X is from this to that and from here to here. Look, I'm just reading what the general consensus for Gen X is. Gen X is 1965 to 1980. And then there's that one gap of people between 81 and 85 that are technically millennials, but we have dubbed them Xennials because we know that they grew up with a lot of the same stuff, if not all of the same stuff we did. So they're more closely related to us than, say, the millennial like my oldest son, who's now 32. He grew up with a lot too, but nowhere near people that were born between 81 and 85. So this is stating 1970 to 1985. So it's clipping off those people born from 65 to 79, or I'm sorry, 69. So let's go ahead and get into this. So they say it here. Gen X, 1965 to 1980, is often called the forgotten generation because it's sandwiched between the much larger baby boomer and millennial generation. However, the forgotten label carries a special meaning for younger Gen Xers because they were probably the least parented groups in kids in American history. Yeah, we talk about that a lot on Gen X. Even in one of my best performing videos about the PSAs, where were our parents at? Because they had to make all of these PSAs because apparently we were left alone all the time and constantly being abducted. So those born in the 70s, which I was, I'm a 74 kid, were raised when there were more dual income households and divorced parents. So many wore keys around their necks and cared for themselves after school. Now, I guess, the Latchkey Kid was an actual program. I was never in the Latchkey program, but most of the times I wasn't going home by myself. When we lived originally in Texas, my grandmother or my aunt would come and pick me up and babysit me after school. Then my mom would get off. When we lived in Nebraska for some time, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, so she was kind of already there. But we always had a house key because you never know if she had to go run an errand or whatever. We always had a house key on us to let ourselves in. So I was not really alone that much when I was younger. It wasn't until I was a teenager that my mom worked different hours and, I was coming and going anyway. So younger Gen Xers also grew up with parents when parents were more permissive, allowing them to stay out all day on their bikes. They only knew it was time to come home when the streetlights came on. They also grew up in the last analog era without cell phones, and parents had to call around various houses to find out where their kids were. Sure, being a kid in those days was a little risky, but it also fostered a fantastic sense of independence. And I think that statement right there is what all Gen Xers feel that sometimes we can't put into words. And that is, uh, it developed a fantastic sense of independence, which I don't feel since the advent of helicopter parents, which I openly admitted in some of my older videos. I was kind of a helicopter parent at times, um, probably more so over my daughter because it's my only daughter. And I was a teenage boy at one time, and I know how teenage boys are. And I didn't allow them to do nowhere near the amount of things that we got to do. And I think it hurt our kids ultimately in the sense that there's not a sense of independence. There's this sense of trying to belong maybe and feel that they need to be a part of something to have worth. I don't fit into those categories, right? I don't need a group or a person or an organization to be a part of to make me have a sense of worth. So I think that's one area where Gen X really benefited from that. And yes, it was a little dangerous at times, but it was absolutely, you know, uh, great for us to have that. And Goonies generation. Okay. And it's funny, I just watched this. I got Goonies on Blu-ray. I've been really getting into Blu-ray lately and just watched Goonies on Blu-ray. And I do have to say, I love the graininess of VHS, but sometimes watching these movies, if they've been remastered properly, watching them on Blu-ray is like watching them for the first time. It's absolutely amazing. So continuing on with the article, this experience isn't completely limited to Gen Xers. Some older millennials also got to experience this type of freedom because kids born between 1970 and 1985 had a very specific experience. Some born in this era have taken to calling themselves Generation Goonie after the 1980 film The Goonies. Quote, having been fortunate enough to speak to a lot of audiences, I have found that younger generations consider Gen X lucky to have grown up without social media and cell phones. Chris Clues, a keynote speaker and author of The Ultimate Essential Work and Life Lessons from 80s Pop Culture, told Newsweek. They often come up to me and express a desire to have grown up in an era where we knew where everyone was based on bikes in the front yard rather than a location sharing on Snapchat or Track My Phone or whatever those other apps are, right? I put up pictures of that memes before. You knew where everybody was at by the amount of bikes that were in the front yard. And if you were riding your bike by and didn't know it and you saw all of their bikes in the yard, you knew you were left out. You weren't invited because everybody told everybody if they wanted you to go. So that's sad but true, but that's how it was. You definitely knew, and it was based on, what they had. Did they have the Nintendo? Did they have an Atari? We had one friend, Trent and Shannon brothers, that had an actual Asteroids game, arcade game in their basement. And I mean, this was in the early 80s, 84, 85. This was before Goonies. So that game had not been out that long. And for them to already have the full version arcade game, which would have probably cost several $1,000s back then, we were just blown away with it. As cheap and boring of a game as it is, it was fun. They had a trampoline also, and that's where we would go and kick the crap out of each other and do karate fights on trampolines. And this was without padding around the springs, mind you. This was not the ones buried in the ground, which I think are actually pretty cool. No, these were ones with the springs off the ground with stuff laying around it. You got kicked off, you felt it. So as it goes on to say, the Goonies is a great example of the kids from the era because they lived in a feral existence. We hear that term a lot. I don't necessarily use that term feral, but I know a lot of Gen Xers do. Traveling long distances on their bikes, had a thirst for adventure, a crude sense of humor, and an independent spirit that meant never say die. Now, those of you that follow the channel, I believe I let you know in past videos that I went to go see all of my family up in Nebraska. And with the help of technology, right, with Google Maps, I was able to locate my old school and then backtrack to my old house because my mom didn't remember the address. And then the mall that I've talked about before, where I would go and buy these ninja posters here and the Japanese throwing stars or shuriken, that they would sell to a 9-year-old without an adult present. I actually mapped that, and it turned out to be almost 2 miles away. And so driving that in the car the other day didn't seem that far, obviously, because we're in a car, but kind of crazy when you think about that we would hop on our bikes and drive or ride all the way down to the mall without parental supervision with some cash in our pocket, lock up our bikes at the bike rack, go in and buy weapons. Man, such a great time. When parents were on the verge of losing their houses, they didn't wait for them. This is talking about the Goonies movie. They didn't wait for them to do something. They went on a dangerous mission to find pirates' treasure to prevent them from being destroyed by evildoers or evil developers. The Generation Goonie trend is taking off on TikTok, where many younger Gen Xers and older millennials proudly embrace the title. I'm not going to go through those. You can kind of take a look at them yourself. But it is interesting. I don't know if I consider myself. I don't believe I'm a younger Gen Xer. I think those people born in the late 70s are considered the younger Gen Xers. I'm more of an older one. But then again, what we call Xennials are those younger millennials. I'm sorry, the older millennials. So if you are a millennial born between 81 and 85, what do you think of being called Generation Goonie? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Let me know below. Continuing on, in 1981, we had the best childhood out of any generation, Bugface wrote. Apparently this is a TikToker. Now, this is something I'm proud of to be a part of, Rob wrote. Hey, you guys, 77 Gen Xer here, Yorkshire, England. We definitely are the only generation to true play outside, tree climbing, bike riding, respectful, no mobile phone, VH watching kids, Two Dogs wrote. I 100% agree with that. I think pretty much every Gen Xer that's watching this video right now had all of those, right? We played outside, we climbed trees, fell out of some trees, we rode our bikes, we were actually respectful to our elders, we didn't have mobile phones, and we watched VHS, right? I still watch VHS. So there's nothing wrong with people who want to embrace the term Gen X. And that's kind of when Roth told me that, I got a little irritated, right? Because I thought maybe it was some Gen Z kid trying to recreate it, the name. But after I read the article, I can kind of understand. But 40 years after the Goonies came out in theaters, the attitudes and the independence of the kids in the movie, once deemed annoying by many, can be seen as a great example of a time that sadly, we can never go back to. Humanity has crossed the digital divide and taken some of the adventure out of childhood. The Goonies is an excellent example of what we've lost, and those who understand the spirit of that era should be proud to embrace the title of Goonie. Now, interesting enough, when my kids do something goofy or say something weird, even my mom, my wife, I call her a Goonie. I'm like, you Goonie, right? So the word has even gotten into our vocabulary as adults because we know what a Goonie is, right? Not a bad thing, but when you're being a little, I don't know, defiant, you call them a Goonie. So I would say I'm able to embrace it. I'm still a Gen Xer. The term Gen X, I said before, it's funny when you look at a lot of the people that we hold up as being great Gen X people and we love it. They're not even Gen Xers. Like Billy Idol was in a band called Generation X, but he's actually a boomer, right? He's a cool ass boomer, right? But Keanu Reeves, who I love, I think he missed being a Gen Xer by 1 year, and he's a boomer. So I actually do like the term a Generation Goonie. I don't think I'll use it because it's just easier to say Gen X. But again, what do you think? What are your thoughts? I'd be really interested in knowing them. Drop a comment below. And as always, if you like the video, consider liking the video, subscribing to my channel, hitting that bell notification to be notified of future videos. Check out the links that I have below for my sponsors of the videos, my own candle company, Totally Rad Candles, will be in the description box, or actually in my shop. Check them out. It helps the channel out. Anything you can do, I really appreciate it. And with that said, I'll catch you on the next video.